students at home. Before we forge ahead with today's topic, I'd like to summarize what we did last week. Last week we discussed a very familiar topic, federalism or federal system of government. So I was able to define federalism. Then I gave you the origin of federalism right from the time of Bernard Bodilon. Then I also gave you a brief history of the emergence of federalism in Nigeria, then factors that necessitated the formation of federalism in Nigeria. Then I defined federalism as a system of government where powers or political powers are shared among the tiers of government. This time, powers are not shared among the organs, but among the tiers of what? Government, either tiers of what? Levels of government. And then if you're talking about the levels of government, you're talking about the federal, the state, and what? The local government. Then I said Nigeria became a federation of 3 regions in 1954. Then USA is a federation of what? 52 states. Then let me give you a brief origin of federalism in Nigeria. We said that federalism was traced back to the division of the country into 3 provinces by who? By Bernard Bodilon in the year 1939. Then before Bernard Bodilon left office, he recommended that provinces should be replaced with what? Region. So that was the first thing that Richard did when he came into office. The first thing he did was what? Was that he changed the issue of province into what? Region. And then instead of saying 3 provinces, we started saying what? 3 regions. Then it was still the same Richard that introduced a federal structure in Nigeria. Then in 1953, McPherson created the House of Reps, both in the central level and what? In the regional level. Then he gave them powers to do what? To make laws. Then we also said in 1954, we had 2 tiers of government. Remember now it is what? 3 tiers because it is a federal, state, and what's local. But in 1954, it was just 2 tiers of government. That's the center or the central and what's the regional level. And then let's go down to the emergence of federalism in Nigeria. I said this can be traced back to 1914 when the northern and southern protectorates were what? Amalgamated by the father of indirect rule known as Lord Lugard. Then I said that true federalism, however, emerged in Nigeria in 1954. Then we also saw the factors that necessitated the formation of federalism. I told you that Nigeria cannot adopt a unitary system of government because of the large population that we have, a large number of people here. So instead of that, Nigeria adopted a federal system of government because of the size of what? The country. Then the second point here is cultural diversity. Now, I also said last week that Nigeria has so many ethnic groups. We should have about 250 or 300 and something ethnic groups in Nigeria. So it will be difficult for a unitary system of government to operate in a place where there is what? Cultural what? Diversity. Then bringing the government closer to the people. Now, a federal system of government helps to bring government closer to the people. For instance, we have local government. It is government at the grassroots, so it is closer to the people. Then today, we are going to see the processes of lawmaking in the states and national assembly. processes of lawmaking in the states and what? The National Assembly. Now, the National Assembly in the Federal Republic of Nigeria is made up of the bicameral legislature. Now, what do I mean by bicameral? It means that bi here means what? Two. It means that we have the upper and what? Lower house. But in a situation where a country practices unicameral, it means they only have one house. But in Nigeria, it is what? Bicameral. And this was established in Section 4 of the Nigerian what? Constitution. Then under this topic, we're going to see what bill is all about. We'll see whether bill and law are the same. Because I know some of you might be confused. Some of you may take law to be bill and then bill to be law. Now, a bill is not a law until it is signed by the executive. A bill is just a proposal of action, still under what? Discussion in the parliament. Then if later signed by the president, it becomes what? A law. So in other words, you cannot say that a bill is a law. A bill is only a law when it is signed by the president. Now, it is not just when a bill is signed by the president that it becomes law. There are stages that are involved in this. Now, when a bill is introduced by a member in the House, it cannot just be taken immediately to the president and he signs it to be a bill. No. There are so many stages involved. We have the first stage, or the first reading, the second reading. We have the committee stage. We have the report stage. We have the third reading, upper house. Then finally, assent. That assent is a presidential signature that makes it to be what? A law, after passing through these 6 stages. Then before we see the stages of a bill, I'd like us to discuss on the types of bills. On the types of bills, or maybe let me write the definition of bill on the board before we continue. So I said that a bill is not a law until it is signed by the executive. Now, a bill is just a proposal of action under discussion in the parliament and later signed to become what? And later signed to become a law by the president. So a bill is not a law until it is signed by the president. Then let us see the types of bills. The types of bills. We have one private bill. Two public bill. Remember, it's not a law. But I said what types of what? Bills. Now we have private bill, we have public bill, and we have what? Money bill. Now this private bill is a bill that is introduced by a lawmaker or a parliamentarian in the House. That's private bill. Then public bill. This has to do with issues that is confronting the country, or issues that are confronting what? The country. And it is often introduced or presented by the executive. Then coming to money bill, this has to do with the way government raises and spends money. So it's a kind of budget. It has to do with the way government raises and what? Spends money. And this type of bill too is also introduced by the executive government. Now let us go to the stages or the procedure on how a bill could become what? A law. Now I told you that a bill cannot just become a law. For instance, a bill cannot just be introduced in the House and then the president signs on it immediately. No. I told you that it must pass through some stages before finally the president gives it his what? Assent. And then after that assent, that is when a bill becomes what? A law. Now, under the procedures on how a bill could become a law, we have 1, first reading, 2, second reading, then we have the committee stage, we have the report stage, third reading, upper house, and what? Assent. We have 7 stages. Before a bill becomes a law, it must pass through these 7 what? Stages. Now let us see the first stage, which is the first reading. Okay, now these are the procedures on how a bill could become a law. We have 1, first reading, 2, second reading, 3, committee stage, 4, report stage, 5, third reading, 6, upper house, and then 7, assent. Now there are 7 in number, and you're not expected to write report where committee is supposed to be, because these are stages. Now, after first reading, it goes forward. A bill goes forward, second reading. Then it goes for committee stage, after which it goes forward, report stage. And then third reading, upper house, and assent. Now, in the first reading, here a bill has already been presented, or is presented by a member in the House. Then, it is when this bill is presented, it is required that the title of the bill should be read by a clerk in the House. Now, at this point, no opposition is what's registered or required. Now, after reading the title of the bill will now be printed into something like this, depending on how voluminous the bill is. Then after printing it into pamphlets and all that, it will be distributed to each member of the House for what? Further study. Remember I said at this point there is nothing like what? Opposition. Because people are yet to know the contents of what? Of the bill. So people can only maybe oppose when they already know the contents of what? The bill. Then after this stage, after printing the bill and giving it out to each member in the House, they now wait for the second what? Reading. That is this one. Now, under the second reading, the bill has already been presented in the first what? Reading. Now, the member that introduced that bill in the House will appeal so that the bill will be what? Read again. You know, it has been read in the first stage, and then the second stage will appeal so that the title of the bill will be what? Reread again, so that people will get to know about it very well. Now, after that, when the bill is reread again the second time, now the members of the parliament will now discuss based on the principle concerning what? The contents of the bill. Now the bill will be debated on, after which a vote will be what? Casted on whether the bill should go to what? The next level. Now, you want to stop it?
No.
Now, if they see that the content of the bill is something that will not be to the detriment of the citizens, and then after voting, majority of the parliamentarians vote in favor of the bill, they now do what? Take the bill to the next level or the next stage, which is what? The committee stage. So that was why I told you that a bill cannot just become a law overnight. It has so many processes, and forget the fact that I'm explaining as if everything will happen within a day. Sometimes a bill can even take a month before it becomes a law. Sometimes it can even take a whole year before it becomes what? A law. Then let us see the committee stage. That's the third point here. Now at this stage, the principle of the bill has been what? Approved by the second house. Now these people people now will now take it to the next stage, which is what? The report stage, for more discussions and what? Amendment. Now from the committee stage, it goes to the report what? Stage. Now in the report stage, there will be further suggestions based on what? The bill. Now after which, after more suggestions, you find out that a member of the House might decide to do what? To move for the bill's what? Amendment. And this is not something that they alone can do. Now after moving for that amendment, the bill will be now shifted or taken to the next level, which is what? The third reading. Now in the third reading, there is nothing like what? Written amendment. For instance, I told you that in this stage, that the bill will be printed and it will be given out to each member of what? The House. Now when it comes to this stage, there will be nothing like written amendments. It is just what? Verbal amendments. Then here, the bill can be passed or what? Rejected, depending on the content of the words of the bill. Then after which, a thorough examination will be made based on what? The bill. Now, if thorough examinations and discussions are made based on this bill, and they deem it fit that, okay, I think this will benefit the citizens, they do what? Take it to the next what? Level, which is the upper house. Or mind you, it is the second to the last house. Now, in this house, the bill has been passed. Then it is now sent to the upper house, which is the Senate. Now, if they need further discussions and amendments, the upper house can now decide to invite the lower house, which is what? The House of Reps, for further amendments. Now after that, if they decide to sit together to iron things out and make sure that everything is what? Is okay with the bill, they can decide to do what? Send it here for what? For a presidential assent. And that presidential assent is what? Just the president's what? Signature. Are you getting me? So when the president signs it or gives the bill his own assent, it becomes what? A law. So you see? And I said that it can't just take a day. Sometimes it can even take a whole year before a bill could become what? A law. Sometimes it can even take 3 months, depending. So a bill is not a law until it becomes what? It is signed by what? The president. So finally, I've really come to the end of this lesson, but before I go, I'd like to go back again to what I discussed today. We discussed the process of making law in the State and National Assembly, and I told you that the National Assembly is made up of what? It is made up of it is a bicameral what? Legislature. Now, and I said bi here means what? 2, because we have the upper and what? The lower house. Then I said it was established in section 4 of the Nigerian Constitution. Then we defined bill. We said bill is not a law until it becomes what? Until it is signed by the executive. And then finally I said a bill is a proposal of action under discussion in the parliament, and then later signed to become a law by the president. That is when his assent comes in. That is when a bill becomes what? A law. Then we talked about types of bills as what? Private bill, public bill, and money bill. I said this private bill is a bill introduced by a member of the parliament. Then public bill is a bill that has to do with issues confronting the country. The money bill, this is how government raises money and what? Spends money. And I told you that this bill is often introduced by the executive government. Then we came down to the procedures on how a bill could become what? A law. And when I said first reading, secondly, the second reading, the third point, committee stage, the fourth point, report stage, the fifth, third reading, the sixth, upper house, and the last but not the least, assent. So I'd like to stop here. If you have any question based on what we have discussed, you can still send it to this platform. Thank you.